Hello and welcome to Bored and Confused, where I review shows based on two criteria. One, was I bored? Two, was I confused? Today's show is The Rocky Horror Show, playing at Roundabout Theater Company's Studio 54. Now, before I jump into the third revival of this cult classic, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me grow this channel and find people who love theater as much as I do. So help me out. Thanks. The Rocky Horror Show. This is the last show of the 2026 season that I needed to see. I did a rush ticket, waited in line. More on that later. This is going to be a ramble. This is going to be off the cuff. So for those of you who just want to know the basics, I was a little bored by this show because it did not engage me the way I had hoped it would. And confused, well, this is by design. This show has a very confusing plot. And even if you watch the movie, which I have watched, this did not help clarify much for me. So yes, I was confused as well. Okay, but now let's get into the details. What did I know about the Rocky Horror Show before I went in? Well, as I said, I've seen the movie probably a couple times. I enjoy the movie, but I think to really enjoy the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you need to see it in a theater with people dressed up in costumes, throwing things at the screen and shouting out all these lines that have kind of become a script of part of watching the movie. That's what makes the movie fun. I've never seen a live production of the show. I did audition for Frank-N-Furter once, and so I learned his songs and his monologues and delved into that character to kind of figure out what he was all about. So I am bringing that to my review of the show. So let's talk about the history of the Rocky Horror Show. It was written by Richard O'Brien, and it premiered in 1973 at Royal Court Theatre Upstairs, which is a tiny 63-seat theatre in London. The original working title was They Came from Denton High, and it was renamed at the suggestion of director Jam Sharman. It was a success in London, and it won the 1973 Evening Standard Award for Best Musical, and it transferred to Chelsea Classic Cinema, then King's Road Theatre. In 1974, it debuted in LA and had a nice 9-month run. And in 1975, it came to Broadway and played at the Belasco Theatre, and it was a huge flop and closed after 3 previews and 45 performances. Remember back in the day when they'd only do 3 previews? Now we have weeks of them. In 1975, the Rocky Horror Picture Show debuted. It was filmed on a shoestring budget, starring Tim Curry, who also starred in the original production in London, and it became a worldwide cult phenomenon. The Rocky Horror Show has benefited from the success of the movie, of course, and the show has been produced all over the world, regional theaters, and this is its 3rd time coming to Broadway. Its first one, as I said, was a flop. The second one was in 2000, and it ran at Circle in the Square Theater. It ran for 14 months, not bad, and closed in 2002 in January, just a month shy of when I came to New York. So I missed it, although I was familiar with it at the time, and it starred Terrence Mann, which I would have loved to have seen. This current production is produced by Roundabout Theater, and it's directed by Sam Pinkleton, coming off of his Oh Mary directorial fame. And I think Sam Pinkleton is a good choice for this because he is a downtown queer theater artist, and so this should be right up his alley. So for those of you who don't know, what is the Rocky Horror Show about? Well, it's set in the 1950s. It's a spoof or a parody on B movies, horror and sci-fi movies. And it follows a young couple who have just gotten engaged, Brad and Janet, and they're very square in a 1950s way. And their car gets a flat tire, and they go to this mysterious looking castle where they encounter the master of the house, Dr. Frank-N-Furter, who welcomes them in, and he tells them that he's doing an experiment where he's creating the perfect man. And then through their evening of staying at this castle, he seduces both of them, and they have a sexual liberation. Remember, this show premiered in the 1970s. I'm going to tell you the full plot because really this show is not about plot. I don't think there's any spoilers here. Nothing's a surprise. Well, everything's a surprise because it makes no sense. But we discovered that Frank-N-Furter and his henchmen are aliens, actually, and then his henchmen decide that Frank-N-Furter's not doing a good job, and they take over and they launch the castle back up to return to their home of transsexual in the galaxy Transylvania. There you go. That's the whole plot. I think it's good that I'm telling you the full plot because it's not very clear in the show. It's not very clear in the movie. And I was hoping with this play that they would add some more character development and make the plot make more sense. No such luck. I think this play was actually more confusing than the movie is. So it will not hurt you to actually know the structure of the story going into this because it's not clear. Oh, and because it's not clear, they have a narrator played by Rachel Dratch who helps us go through the story, but even then it's tenuous at best. So this show is 2 acts. It's under 2 hours, about 1 hour and 50 minutes, and that includes the intermission. So it is mercifully short, as it should be when you're dealing with this kind of camp parody. As you walk into the theater, it's got a very DIY vibe. It's that B-movie feeling. There's silver piping. There's mannequins spray painted silver. They've put that silver plastic coating on the seats to make them shiny. It's very low budget, off Broadway kind of feel, which is how the show originated and feels appropriate. But this is a huge theater, so it's just all over. There's strings of lights to give it a kind of green glow. The night I saw the show, there was some audience participation, which I think is appropriate for the Rocky Horror Show because that's why it was so successful as a movie. It became a cult classic and people would shout at the screen and throw things. Now, there is an announcement before the show begins. He's trying to tamp that down so it doesn't get too crazy. Hopefully people know that you really shouldn't throw things at actors, but I welcomed the shout outs because that to me, that's just part of the Rocky Horror Show. I was in the orchestra and there was on the second row on the right, seat B4, so right up in the action, there was a guy in the orchestra a few rows behind me who seemed to know all of the cues and was shouting them out. But as the production went along, I think he got kind of tired of it, as did the other people who were shouting out. And by the second act, there really wasn't many shout outs anymore, which I thought was unfortunate. It felt like the energy of the play, not just because of the shouting out, but the production in general seemed to kind of lose its energy as we went into the second act. Where I was sitting in row B meant that the box where half of the band was not far from me, but the drums were on the other side, and the drums are usually the worst to be nearby. But they also had a speaker set up right there that was piping in the orchestra, whereas the vocals, which were being piped in from speakers that were more center stage, which makes sense so that it sounds more like we're hearing the actors sing. But the issue I had with my seat is the orchestra speaker was closer to me than the vocal speaker. So the orchestra was overpowering the vocals. And even though I was so close and I could see their lips moving, I missed a lot of lyrics. And also we have to know that the lyric writing in this show, it does not use perfect rhymes. It uses slant rhymes. There's not a lot of attention to detail. This isn't Stephen Sondheim lyrics. This is a 63-seat theater in London, parody rock musical. So the lyrics are like you would expect. They're just kind of crazy. But flashes of brilliance. I love the song that Janet and Brad sing where everything rhymes with Janet and everything rhymes with Brad. It's stupid and I actually find it very funny. Okay, I'm going to work my way through the cast now and talk about each one individually, which I don't usually do. This will be fun. All right, so as the narrator, we have Rachel Dratch. I'm a little on the fence about this because, first of all, this normally is played by a male, and they've gender switched it. She's dressed like a man in a smoking jacket, but she's got longer hair, but then again, maybe it's like an Oscar Wilde kind of wig. So I don't know if she's supposed to be a man or a woman. Confused by that. And I don't feel like this role really plays to Rachel Dratch's persona as a performer. But that being said, she is very good off the cuff in the moment. She's a good improviser, which I think is really important for this show because we've got audience members shouting out things, especially during her monologues, and she is able to handle it. She's able to accept it and turn it back around. She's funny, and so I enjoyed her. Next, we have Brad Andrew Durand, who is well cast in this role. He looks right for the role. He's playing it very square. I really liked him. I don't think he really brought anything to the role that isn't expected. He has a great voice and really nails his solo in the second act. Dr. Frank-N-Furter, the man of the hour, played by Luke Evans. I thought Luke Evans did a great job. He seems to do a little bit of a nod to Tim Curry, but he's not trying to reproduce Tim Curry's performance, which don't try to reproduce Tim Curry because you're bound to fail. He is 100% dedicated to this. He's really willing to go there. And so I really enjoyed him. I think he was, whenever he was on stage, which is quite a lot, he was bringing a lot of energy to the performance, and he was really in it to win it. He lacked a little bit of childlike innocence that I feel Tim Curry had, that I actually really like for the character. But overall, I really loved him. As Riff Raff, we've got an interesting choice. The great Amber Gray has been cast in a role that is normally played by a male and was originally played by Richard O'Brien, who wrote the whole show. And Richard O'Brien has this really great high screaming rock tenor. Now, I missed that because this is the role where you're like, oh, this guy's an amazing rock vocalist. And although Amber Gray is a great vocalist, this music just isn't in a key for her to show off. That being said, she is making very strong choices. She's almost unrecognizable with this gray zombie-like makeup. She's doing a raspy voice. She made strong choices, and she's a great actor, and I appreciate that. But I did miss the vocals that I was expecting. As Eddie and Dr. Scott, we've got Harvey Guillén, and I felt Eddie's number just was staged kind of haphazardly and it flew by. Vocally, I didn't find him that impressive. He didn't have a big rock scream like Meatloaf or, who from the movie. And as Dr. Scott, I felt like he was also, he's no longer in a wheelchair, but at one point they put him in just a rolling office chair. And then there's a line about his wheels being stuck, which is a line that was originally written to refer to his wheelchair. But I think currently we're not allowed to cast someone in a wheelchair unless they're really in a wheelchair, which I don't understand really, let's be honest, because we see people using crutches, canes, and wheelchairs all the time who can walk. Working in the theater, I have seen many people who roll in a wheelchair and then hop out and trot down and take their seat. They're in the wheelchair probably because they just don't want to walk all the many blocks on Broadway, so they can get up and do a jig. So I don't know. Is it wrong to put a walking actor in a wheelchair? I guess it is. But so for me though, make a choice. Putting in an office chair just seems like, oh, what are we doing? It's like we're trying to reference the wheelchair, but not. Confused by this character. And I don't know, this performance didn't really stand out to me one way or the other. As Janet, we have Stephanie Sue, who is in this 100%. She's full camp. She is chewing the scenery. When someone is going that hard, for me, it makes it less funny. But the audience seemed to really be enjoying her. I laughed at her a few times. Her physical comedy is great. She's a little gal, and she was going all in. She was going more in than I think her scene partner, Andrew Durand, as Brad was. So appreciated it, but didn't make me laugh a lot. As Magenta, we've got Juliette Lewis. And this is like I think she's an Academy Award nominee. She's kind of a famous actress. I was super surprised. When I saw her, I was like, wait a minute, I know that face. But she opens the show with the song Double Feature, and her vocals are a little wobbly. And I didn't feel like she had a strong perspective of who she was. Now, she's dressed as an usherette in the beginning, but I couldn't tell, is this an usherette who loves this kind of movie? Or does she hate them? Does she love working at the theater? Does she hate working at the theater? I don't know. I just didn't feel like she was giving me anything to grab on. She looked great in her usherette costume, but I don't know. It was a wobbly beginning for the show. And then when she became Magenta, I felt that the other two of Columbia and Riff Raff, which I'll get into Columbia in a second, I felt they were making strong choices, for better or for worse. But I felt like Magenta was just, I didn't really understand who she was. Then we've got Rocky, who normally is played by Josh Rivera, but at the production I saw, it was played by the understudy Boy Radio. And he's got the body for it, but his vocals weren't super strong in his one big song. And we'll get into costumes in a second. But he didn't give me everything I needed. Maybe he was going on for the first time. I don't know how many times he's gone on for Rocky. And then wrapping this all up, we've got Columbia, played by Michaela J. Rodriguez. And Michaela was making a very strong choice of doing this high, squeaky voice for Columbia, which I applaud a strong choice, but it made her impossible to understand. And then in the second act, when she has her monologue where it's revealed that she's a paramour of Dr. Frank-N-Furter, who got cast aside, she has this monologue about how badly he treated her, and her voice dropped an octave. So I just was confused. And then they spray her with some smoke like it's a drug, and then her voice went back up. So I was confused by who her character was. Has she been drugged by Frank-N-Furter? He's keeping her around? Or is she there because she's in love with him and she won't let him go? Just did not understand the character. But I applaud Michaela for making a strong choice. And vocally, she seems to have a very large vocal range. She did some high head voice falsetto moments in the second act that I was like, all right, girlfriend. And then wrapping us out, we've got 4 phantoms played by Caleb Kazan, Larkin Riley, Paul Soilu, and we had John Yee, who went on for The Boy Radio, who normally is one of the phantoms. I don't know. The phantoms to me are weird, especially in this production, because they're all dressed the same, basically. They're all in black. They have different hair colors, I think. They're like this Greek chorus that just kind of appears whenever we need backup vocals, which I appreciate because I hate disembodied backup vocals. So I appreciate that we have real people. But what I didn't like about them is they are phantoms in the sense that none of the actors on the stage seem to acknowledge that there are these 4 people wandering around the stage and in the castle. So my question was, are they phantoms in that only the audience can see them? I think it is. I think it's that they're not seen by anyone. I'm just now getting that. Watching the show, I was like, who are these people and why can no one see them? All right, so let's get into costumes. The costumes are really fun and exciting, but, they bothered me a little bit, especially Rocky's costume, because he comes out in this flesh-colored lace-up wrestling singlet, and he's got knee pads and sneakers on, so it feels like he's ready to go to a wrestling match. And it just, maybe that makes more sense when it's played by Josh Rivera, who's got more of a beefier body. But to me, even RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul knows how to dress the beefcakes. You put them in a pair of briefs and that's it. And that's 1950s movies. I think of them on the beach. Just you put them in a pair of briefs and maybe you let them wear shoes. Maybe. And I think, when you're creating a Frankenstein monster, why do they come out in wrestling gear? I could see Frank-N-Furter dressing him up later, but it just seems like for the male gaze, Gaze, homosexual gaze, you keep him naked. That's kind of the whole point of Rocky, right? And also a lot of the costumes, although very cool, and I think Luke Evans looked amazing in his costumes. He had these really great 4-inch heel boots with straps, which he does take off for the second act. Probably he's like, I can't walk in these anymore. But he looks great. But the costumes are a little weird because the costumes are much more expensive looking than the props that are surrounding us. So they feel more modern. They feel like modern fetish wear as opposed to 1950s fetish wear, as opposed to Brad and Janet. But then again, they are aliens, so I guess aliens don't have to wear 1950s fetish wear. I don't know. I'm on the fence. And then let's talk about the set design. So the set design, before we get to the castle, it feels very DIY. It feels very downtown theater. Like when they do the car, Janet is doing the windshield wiper with her hand as she says her lines. And Brad just has a steering wheel. And then we've got 2 of the phantoms with headlights. It's very downtown, do it yourself. And most of the show from the very beginning is doing that until they arrive at the castle and the curtain goes up. And all of a sudden we're on Broadway. And we've got a huge multi-tiered set with this huge staircase. There's candles everywhere. Frank-N-Furter makes his entrance, and then he's got this amazing fringe coat, and then he's got this amazing costume. So in that moment, I was a little bit like, oh, we're on Broadway now. We're not downtown theater anymore. And that was a little weird to me. And this brings me to kind of a problem I have just with the Rocky Horror Show in general. This was originally created in a 63-seat theater. To me, it feels like a kind of show that I've seen at the Fringe Festival, at the New York Musical Theater Festival, RIP, where everything's done on a shoestring budget and we don't have high expectations. But then when you take the Rocky Horror Show and you put it on a Broadway stage in a huge theater, now I get that it's Studio 54, who has a history of being queer and crazy, so it makes sense to put Rocky Horror there. But that being said, it is a huge Broadway house. And so you've got this tension. Are we doing a big Broadway spectacular, or are we doing something that's on a shoestring budget? You've cast actors with huge Broadway and film and TV credits, but then they're performing a script that is really rough. But then the band sounds amazing. And the set is really scaled down, but then it's really huge. And the audience is allowed to participate, but not participate too much. And so what ends up happening is I just don't see how someone can pay $200, $300 for an orchestra seat for this show and then watch this kind of show that really should be at a small off-Broadway or off-Broadway theater. You know, they brought Little Shop of Horrors, which is a much better show, kind of in the same genre, but has a great score, has excellent lyrics, has excellent music, has amazing characters, has an amazing story, has an amazing moral to the story. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of Little Shop. When they brought it to Broadway, it didn't last long. It didn't really work. And now it's back off Broadway where it belongs. And that's what I feel about the Rocky Horror Show. I just don't feel like it belongs on Broadway. And this show was successful in the 1970s because it was scandalous. It was shocking. And I just don't feel like it's that shocking anymore. We've got Cats the Jellicle Ball representing LGBT culture in the Harlem ballroom scene. We've got Oh Mary, which is very downtown edgy theater. And I guess maybe because the success of Oh Mary on Broadway feels like, oh, off Broadway belongs on Broadway. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. I just don't see how this show belongs on Broadway. But you know, I think it worked at Circle in the Square in 2000 because Circle in the Square is in the round. They don't have big fly systems. It feels like an off-Broadway theater. And I think that's why it worked in 2000. I think that's also why the original production in the 70s at the Belasco didn't work. The Belasco is a huge 3-tiered theater. It would have been better to have been at the Biltmore, which is now the Samuel J. Friedman, or Circle in the Square. So let me wrap this up with, was I bored? Was I confused? Yes, I was a little bored. The show is less than 2 hours long, and there's always something interesting going on. You got people running around in their underwear, doing sexual things, and they did achieve the shock value with a moment between Dr. Frank-N-Furter and Brad, which I won't spoil. But ultimately, I'm not engaged in this show, so I am a little bored, and I wasn't laughing a lot. I should be laughing throughout the show, and I wasn't. Was I confused? Yeah, I found the show even more confusing than the movie. I was confused by the choices. I was confused by whether we were doing off-Broadway, do it yourself, or whether we were doing a big Broadway spectacle. So, the Rocky Horror Show was never meant to be great theater. It was always just meant to be wild and provocative. And I feel like this show is not as wild and provocative as it needs to be. It might be just because we're living in a time now where it's hard to shock and surprise a New York City audience. I think fans of the movie, fans of the show, people who love LGBT queer theater will really enjoy this. This is who it's for. I don't know if you're going to be able to afford the high-priced tickets. So let me tell you, you can get $30 tickets. There's 3 places. You can get them rush tickets. You can get $30 hip ticks, which is for people 40 and under. $30 digital rush, which I played every day and never won it. So I resorted to going and waiting outside the box office. I went on Tuesday. I arrived at around a little bit after 9. So thank you for watching another unhinged, unfiltered ramble of a review. If you made it to the very end, I really appreciate you. Please enjoy this play-out music and go check out the Rocky Horror Show. Get yourself one of those $30 tickets. People under 40 can get the Hip Ticks ticket. Find someone under 40 and get those. Play the lottery. You probably won't win. The only other way is to stand in line. So if you stand in line, make sure no one cuts in front of you. All right, we all got to be in this together. Everyone have a great day, and I'll see you. Oh, there is no next one. This was the last one of the season. So I will see you in my next video. I think I'm going to talk about the Drama Desk. Woohoo! Drama Desk Awards, and then we'll do my Tony nomination predictions, and then we're going to get into Tony season coverage. I hope you're looking forward to that. All right, bye. Drift away, wanna stay inside the play, keep me engaged, keep me amused with what's in front of me.